little 3-minute video that we have that explains it all pretty sweetly. So the next bill that we have listed, oh wait, let's go back to HB3382 real quick. So again, earlier I just found out that this has been bumped down into a subcommittee, which makes this a lot more frustrating and difficult because now we've got an additional hurdle to jump through in order to get it out of regular committee, which was Labor and Commerce. So we need to see what's going on with this bill. It got bumped last Thursday afternoon, because I was on here Friday and didn't see this. It's now been moved to a Business and Industry Subcommittee. So again, you can click on these committees and you can see who is in the committee, and these folks need to be called and they need to be talked to, and they need to be told that we support this bill. We support protecting property owners' rights. We don't know when this bill is going to be called, but we have been told that the Representative Gazzardi will let us know when it's going to be called in the committee, which was Labor and Commerce, and then at that point in time, we go through the same process we just did with the HB3382. What we're going to ask folks to do is slip support when it's time to go to committee. That's what we're going to need to do. Slip support. All right, high volume fracking. This is the ban on fracking. It's time, folks. It is beyond time. What we are doing is drilling ourselves to disaster, and that's a piece of science, a research project that has been done by many organizations across the U.S., and we need to hammer our representatives about the importance of keeping fossil fuels in the ground, in particular through fracking. It's been shown that the added methane from fracking is exacerbating the methane in the atmosphere, and that methane is trapping heat and exacerbating the global warming, the greenhouse gases, and we are in a very short, urgent time span to make drastic changes to not only our environment but also to what is happening politically. We have to make drastic changes if we want to make sure that life on Earth is sustainable for the long term. At this rate, it's not. So, don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but it's time to ban fracking. Our fact sheet goes into great detail about why our planet is at risk, water contamination and usage, earthquake hazards, air pollution, the health and well-being of communities is being threatened, and there's a clear and present danger that fracking poses to everybody. So, get on the phone. As we see that this hasn't been referred out of Rules Committee, which means that it hasn't been assigned yet to a specific committee, and what we end up having to do is call these people and say, hey, we really want to see this go to committee so that we can vote it out. We can start here, but we can just start calling the governor, we can start calling everybody in Springfield and letting them know that we are done with fracking. I know a lot of people have asked me how much fracking is happening in Illinois. Well, that goes back to the first bill, HB3382. Is because we don't exactly know how much low and mid-volume fracking is happening because of confidentiality agreements signed with state and the oil and gas companies. So, to date, we don't exactly have a number. What we do know is that one permit was applied for, and that business left Illinois because the rules and regulations were just too egregious for a company to do business in Illinois. So at this time, there are no known high-volume frac permits happening in Illinois. But that's not to say we shouldn't fight to ban it. We should fight to ban it. Eminent domain, in 2007, if I'm correct on the year, they changed the laws, and what happened was landowners who were being petitioned by pipeline companies were no longer given the right to a jury trial to give just compensation for their land. And so all this bill is doing is restoring the right to a landowner to request for a jury by trial, or a trial by jury, and so they can get receive just compensation for their property. That's all this is doing. This is literally restoring the law to where it was previously before 2007. It's nothing new, it's nothing different, it's just where the law used to be 12 years ago. So we support this wholeheartedly because we know as oil and gas infrastructure expands out, Illinois has a lot of pipelines, and we want to make sure that landowners are not being abused by the power of corporations who are selling their products globally, and they're claiming to be a state utility and that their products, their oil and gas, are for state use, when in fact we know with the Dakota Access that all of the oil is being shipped overseas. It's headed down to the Gulf Coast for export. So let's not let corporations abuse eminent domain in the way they have been for the last 12 years. Let's stop that nasty loop. And the last but not least is our local control bill. This is sponsored by Daniel Diedick, and he took on this bill. He's anti-fracking, but it hasn't been referred out of Rules Committee. So it would be great if folks could be calling and letting our representatives in the Rules Committee especially know that we think that local consent is something that counties should have the right to do. So a little bit about local consent. Right now, counties do not have a say-so about what happens within their jurisdiction. And so counties can be forced to accept an oil and gas operation within their jurisdiction, but they'll also assume the financial responsibility of such. So when an oil and gas company moves in, especially hydraulic fracturing, there's a lot of wear and tear on the roads, and that the county has to take up the financial responsibility of repairing those roads. You most likely will have an increase in law enforcement. Your health and human services will also be taxed to the max. You may have an influx of people attending school, then you don't have the revenue base to support that because the workers are most likely transient. Not in all cases, but in most cases that we've seen in places like North Dakota and the Bakken, a lot of those workers are transient. And so you have a lot of stress on county resources, and counties should have a right to say whether or not they want to accept that financial burden and those stress, and they should have the right to refuse hydraulic fracturing if said county isn't able to maintain infrastructure as it is now. So, and if that county thinks that they can handle it, great, they should have the right to say so, but we should also have the right to say, no, we can't take this on. So there is a local control bill. We think that this is important, and we think that if counties can have the right to ban wind farms, if they have the right to ban CAFOs, if they have the right to do any other thing, they should have the right to ban fracking. Counties know what's best for them. That's the closest, that's the local government that many of us in the unincorporated areas depend on most for our services. And like right now, I've got a county road that has the biggest freaking potholes in it, and the county can't afford